Hey, welcome back to McMaster's Chronicles. I'm Jonathan,
And I'm Joy.
and we are going to start a series about what we like to call the playbook of our pastors, the abusive pastors and leaders in our church that we used to go to.
It's going to be called Our Abusive Pastors Playbook.
So we're just going to kind of go through different tactics that they would use against us in all of those years. The first one, which we have some examples about, is just really whenever we would try to bring something up to them and say, this was wrong, or we didn't even have to say it was wrong. We just had an issue with it, or we just, had a question about it or whatever. They would automatically turn it back to the reason there's a problem is because of how we were handling it, what we did. And we always became the problem. And it was like never, ever, ever would they actually be the ones that would take responsibility that they did something wrong.
And this is called, this is actually an abusive tactic known as Darvo. It stands for deny, accuse, reverse the victim and the offender. And it's what abusers do to not
take responsibility,
not take accountability for their actions. So I have a pretty crazy example of this. You can think of an example that you want to use. But one example is back in 2016, 2015, I was upset about a certain thing. And so I had expressed that I was upset about it. And it had to do with like what I was being paid at this job I was. And I just expressed like I was working a lot. I was expecting a different pay.
Well, you were kind of like under the, like, based on what we'd been told about it, you were expecting more pay than you were given. I was expecting more.
And I was just like telling Jonathan about it. We were either engaged or dating. I think we were dating. And I told Jonathan, I was like, I'm upset because like I thought I was going to be paid more at this job. And this job had nothing to do with Gibbet. It was just like a separate job. And so I was kind of upset about it. Told Jonathan. All of a sudden, it was a problem. Like, I should not have had a problem with this. I should not have, expressed this problem. I should have just taken, I should be thankful.
Right, that's right.
I should be thankful. And so come to find out later on, that's emotional control. So basically, you're having a natural response to something, and then you are punished for having a natural response to something. So first off, that's emotional control. Second, in the middle of him, what they call correction, but is not correction, it is abuse. It's like in the middle of being berated, he calls me a bitch. So this is the first time that I sort of saw him do this. This is the pastor emeritus. This is the first time I ever saw him actually do this to me, to anyone kind of close to me, in front of me. I'm sure it happened to other people that were close to me, but I wasn't witness to it. And so it was the first time I saw this. And so I was really taken back. And because of my prior history of abuse, it was definitely easy for him to convince me that I deserved that it was really something was wrong with me, that something spiritually was wrong with me. And he was just telling me the truth. He was just telling me the truth of who I was. I was really a bitch. So because I was really a bitch, I needed to change my tune. I needed to not express dissatisfaction.
You just needed to be
thankful. To just be thankful. And so that was his way to correct me. And then this kind of comes in where part of how people live with this cognitive dissonance of being completely mistreated, but then believe that their pastor is walking a healthy spiritual life, is the verse, "No correction is joyous." And we can talk about that probably a little bit later, because that's one of their tactics too, is like, well, the Bible says that it's not joyous, so this must be what it's meant to be like. Well, okay, guess what? I was not successful in gaslighting myself. And so it pretty much ate away at me for like a year that he called me a bitch, because there's nothing right about it. Even if I was a bitch, it wasn't okay. But I wasn't a bitch, and it's not okay. And it's never okay to say that. So I was very unsuccessful at gaslighting myself into believing that that was okay. And so guess what? One Sunday, I'm sitting down in the back of the church, and I'm like, something's just not right. Something's just not right. We're married now. Mm-hmm. This is 2017. So one of the pastor's wives comes up to me and she's like, "Is something wrong?" And guess what? I made a horrible mistake of telling her that something was wrong, because you have to understand too that you're being told, like, people before you, they never said what was wrong. They just held it in and then left, and they didn't express it. So you kind of have this, like, you're being told lies, and you have like this hope that if you were to tell them that this is wrong, because then it would be corrected, then it would be fixed. So I tell her, I was like, I just keep thinking about this time that the pastor emeritus called me a bitch. I'm laughing about it because it is absolutely absurd that this even happened. But I'm just like, I'm just thinking about this time, and I have a problem with it. Well, then, instead of that causing a complete change, instead of that, a pastor being spoken to, other pastors dealing with that pastor, apologies, instead of that happening, actually they turned it on to me, and they blamed me for having ill will toward them for all that time. For that whole time, I was harboring ill will. In reality, I was trying to be loving and accepting and trying to suppress natural emotion so that things would work out. That was actually what was happening. But no, they said I was harboring ill will toward the pastor. This was also when I told Jonathan, and there was strange text messaging, phone calls, I don't even think we have record of anymore. But then this is when I was on the phone with Jonathan, and I'm like, it's not okay to be called a bitch, and I don't want to go back. So 2017, I said, I don't want to go back. But he wasn't ready for that at the time. You're very fresh. You're 23. No, probably like 25 or so. Yeah. But you're young. We've talked, he had a closer relationship. He was, he had more bonds there. So I go to church that Wednesday, didn't want to go, still went. And that's where I had to apologize for having an attitude towards the pastors. So that's an example of how they reverse the victim in the affair. So I was the victim. I was being victimized by the pastor there. I should never have been called that name, even if I was acting in a bad way, but I wasn't even acting in a bad way. Right. But I should never, this is never acceptable, and do not accept this, and do not let them do this to you. But then I was the victim, but then no, they're the victim. So that is my example of Darvo.
And that's how, even that night though, like one of the other pastors, like they made that whole evening about people like apologizing publicly. So we had to like go up in front of the whole church and like apologize to him for this. And then we talked to him specifically afterwards. And I remember that like because he turned it on you, and it was like this thing of how you were bad and I was bad for letting you hold that for whatever. He got on me for that too. And then he says the thing of like, if you have a problem with something, you just tell me right away and we deal with it. But there was never an apology. And the thing is that,
and that's a lie.
It is a lie, because whenever I've told him things before, I've never once heard an apology from him. I've sometimes seen him like acknowledge it, and then maybe he acts a little bit different for a short period of time, but then he comes right back to it. I think we've talked about the time where he cursed me out and then doubled down on that. But like they never apologize. So the whole facade that they give you is that, oh, you just have to talk about it. But the problem is,
when you talk about it, they will pounce. They will pounce on you.
So then I can't talk about it, but then I'm supposed to talk about it. But if I talk about it, I'm going to get in trouble. If I don't talk about it, I'm going to get in trouble. But so then you're left with this, like, what do I do?
So often, so sometimes you just suppress.
Yeah, and you think, well, it's not even just like suppressing. You're suppressing believing that, like, okay, because like in that time, it's like the pastor is always right. That's kind of like the mantra there. No, it's just like this thing of like the pastor is always right. So you're believing like, I'm going to follow this or believe it and have to suppress your emotions because you believe your emotions are wrong because you're feeling this certain way. And so it's just like, it totally messes with your just normal emotional response to things. But yeah, it makes other people be the victim. And I've seen it where, even more recently in the past year or so, where the pastors will make young ladies, just people in the church, feel like they are hurting him for not making enough money for him.
Yes.
These are 20 to 25-year-old girls that are going up to him after church because he had a whole speech during the middle of the service about how nobody cares for him and how he's the victim, how he's done all this stuff and they don't care for him. These are young ladies establishing their lives and their careers and trying to find a man and all that stuff. And he's getting onto them as well as everybody else for not making enough money for him. So he's becoming the victim again. And this is like a continual cycle over years of like, he will come up and say, I've done all this stuff for you and you don't care for me, or you don't care for this other pastor or whatever. But he does it through lies too. Like in that specific instance, he lied about the finances and his money. But he, in any way that he can, he becomes the victim. And I guess my personal example is when I spoke with him since leaving and saying, like, talking about the text message that he sent me about you. And he basically, the first thing he did was say that I was just angry at him, or that I wasn't really loving because I was doing that. The thing is that you can't say anything that's wrong to them without it being called an accusation or without it being called you're angry. And then they're all of a sudden, if you say anything, they're all of a sudden the victim now, and you're the bad one for saying it. And that's what always made it hard, is because anytime you brought something to them, it was always your fault. Even, I think we spoke about it with the money when I was in the hospital.
You're like, hey, this is crazy.
Yeah, but
you're handling it wrong.
You're not
communicating enough. No, they know what's going on. We'd
had multiple conversations for years.
For years about it.
Yeah.
For years we spoke. They knew exactly what they were doing.
So they use it under the guise of, you need to handle it better. You need to deal with it better. You just need to come to us and talk about it. But the thing is that is a lie. That's a false premise that they give you.
Oh, they'll help you, all right.
Because if you bring it to them,
they'll help you suppress your emotion, your doubt, your natural response to something, and they'll get whatever they can from you. That's how they'll help you. It
literally took one of the pastors blowing up in anger towards another pastor for them to say, oh, he had a panic attack. and kind of justify
not even owning up to it.
No, it wasn't. It was just like
it was saying like,
oh, pastors have bad times too, and it was a panic attack and all this stuff. And
I'm like, no, that wasn't a panic attack.
Like that's what they had to go to is like justifying it by I had a panic attack and responded that way.
So that is our example of, or that is our explanation of Darvo. And Darvo is used, I think Darvo may be top. It may be the very top tactic, but it's also used with other tactics. And so we have more tactics coming your way. And
there's a lot of very subtle
Abusive
things.
Pastor Playbook.
Yeah, a lot of things that they use that you may not even notice. But whenever you kind of realize it, it hopefully will open your eyes to like seeing what they're actually doing.
And guess what? Their tactics, they're nothing new. Abusers use these same tactics. Unfortunately, they encase them in the Bible. And so you don't know what's true, if it's God, if it's the Bible, if it's them. So that can be very, very damaging.
So we'll continue this with some more tactics and talk about different things that you can be on the lookout for. But thank you for watching. Please click subscribe, like if you would, and we look forward to seeing you next time.